Just 43 seconds. That's all it took. The confident smile of the FBI nominee vanished. Senator Whitehouse struck his gavel sharply against the mahogany desk as cameras captured every moment of the unraveling. The Senate chamber filled with startled gasps. What did Kash Patel think he could conceal from one of Congress's most relentless interrogators? This wasn't a typical confirmation hearing. It was the moment when America's most controversial FBI nominee faced a calculated examination that would reveal him as unfit for the nation's highest law enforcement office. The morning had begun with routine procedural votes, but it would end with one of the most bruising Senate showdowns in modern political memory. At 10:15 a.m. inside the Hart Senate building, tension hung thick in the air. The polished mahogany panels glowed under fluorescent lights as reporters adjusted their cameras and whispered into microphones. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the Rhode Island Democrat known for his prosecutorial precision and unflinching style, sat poised like a hunter who had spent months preparing for this moment. Across the witness table, Kash Patel entered with the self-assured stride of a man who believed his loyalty to Trump made him untouchable. At 44, the former aide carried the confidence of someone who had weathered investigations, hearings, and countless media storms. His tailored suit, crisp flag pin, and deliberate composure were all meant to project authority and patriotism. Behind him sat a team of Republican strategists and legal advisors, their folders packed with talking points and defensive scripts. They had trained him to deflect, to pivot, and to preserve the illusion of competence that had long shielded him in Trump's orbit. But Whitehouse had spent months meticulously preparing for this encounter, gathering evidence with the thoroughness that made him one of the Senate's most feared questioners. Stacked behind him were court documents, investigative files, and video clips, each a potential weapon. His staff had coordinated with former administration officials, legal experts, and journalists who had chronicled Patel's controversies over the years. The senator viewed this as democracy's last line of defense, a chance to stop someone he believed was dangerously unqualified from leading America's premier investigative agency. The stakes were enormous. The integrity of the FBI, the rule of law, perhaps even democracy itself. C-SPAN cameras zoomed in on every subtle movement, broadcasting to millions of Americans who sensed they were witnessing something historic. Across the nation, viewers leaned closer to their screens as tension built like static before a storm. Social media buzzed. The hashtag Kash Patel hearing trended worldwide as people braced for what was coming. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Whitehouse began calmly, his voice even but deliberate, the tone of a prosecutor about to dismantle a case. "Welcome, Mr. Patel." His words were polite, but his stillness betrayed precision. Observers recognized the posture of a man who had built his career on exposing deceit. Patel nodded, folding his hands to project composure and control. Inside, he felt ready for the usual partisan attacks, his ties to Trump, his limited law enforcement experience, his controversial remarks. His team had prepared him for all of it, or so they believed. What followed would destroy that confidence and expose deep flaws in his judgment and character. Whitehouse began with surgical precision. "I remember January 6, he said. Colleagues running for safety, shouting that rioters should be stopped. We returned to our duties through hallways guarded by armed SWAT teams." His tone carried the weight of first-hand experience, the memory of democracy under siege. "None of us said those violent rioters should be pardoned," he continued. "A Republican colleague called such pardons absurd. Senator J.D. Vance said violent offenders shouldn't be pardoned. Even Jim Jordan agreed pardons should apply only to those who didn't commit violence." The setup was deliberate, a foundation of bipartisan consensus. Then came the blow. "But Trump pardoned all of them," Whitehouse declared, his words echoing through the chamber. "And there's a lesson in that. Every time you think Trump wouldn't go that far, think again." Patel's face remained steady, but cameras caught the tension tightening his jaw. He knew where this was heading. Whitehouse pressed on. "We all agree violence against police is unacceptable. Yet more than 600 people who assaulted Capitol officers are now back on the streets, part of what's being called Trump's 11,500-person private army." The phrase Trump's private army rippled through the room like an electric shock. Reporters exchanged glances. Within seconds, AGR Trump Army was trending online. And within 10 days, Whitehouse added, some of them were already committing new crimes. The fact landed like an indictment, each word amplifying the gravity of Patel's association with those decisions. The senator wasn't finished. We've worked as a committee to address online drug trafficking and violence for hire, he continued. Yet Trump pardoned a dark web operator sentenced to life for drug sales and accused of arranging murders for hire. The revelation sent murmurs across the chamber. Even veteran political analysts were stunned by the scope of Trump's pardons and their implications for public safety. Patel shifted uneasily, aware that defending such actions would be politically disastrous. Those pardons, Whitehouse said, as Mr. Patel has defended, are not just mistakes. They are warnings. Warnings that we are entering a dangerous era. With that, the senator framed the hearing's true purpose, to expose what was at stake. The risk that the FBI could become an instrument of political power, used to silence critics. Target rivals and shield violent supporters is a risk we cannot ignore. His voice rose, firm and resolute. Then came the final blow. The systematic dismantling of Kash Patel's credibility, delivered with precision and purpose. Here are some warnings from this nominee's former Trump administration colleagues, Senator Whitehouse began, producing what he called his first documentary exhibit. Former Attorney General Bill Barr stated that this nominee had virtually no experience to qualify him for leadership in the world's foremost law enforcement agency. Barr added that he would never be able to command the respect required to manage the Bureau's day-to-day operations. The quote from Trump's own Attorney General was devastating. Coming from within Trump's circle, it carried immense weight and credibility. But Whitehouse was only getting started. Former CIA Director Gina Haspel was reported to have threatened resignation rather than work under this nominee. John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, said bluntly, "I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him." Each statement added another layer to the growing case that even Trump's top appointees considered Patel unfit and reckless. Then came the coup de grace. Trump's former deputy national security advisor, Patel's direct supervisor, stated, "His ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job. He's untrustworthy, and it's a complete disgrace to even consider him." The words "absolute disgrace" echoed through the chamber like a sentence being passed. These weren't partisan Democratic attacks, but damning judgments from Republican officials who had worked closely with Patel and found him dangerously unfit. Whitehouse then introduced his most alarming evidence. "And here," he said, "is what this nominee has said about using his office to prosecute journalists." The senator read Patel's own words. "We will find the conspirators, not just in government but in the media. We're coming after you, whether criminally or civilly." The threat to journalists hung heavy in the air. In a democracy, law enforcement threatening the press sounded authoritarian and deeply troubling. Whitehouse leaned forward, his tone sharp and prosecutorial. "Is that an accurate quote, Mr. Patel?" This was the turning point. Patel could either accept his words or try to backpedal. His response would define the hearing. "Senator, that's a partial quotation, but it's correct in part," Patel replied, his tone slightly defensive. It was the classic politician's dodge, acknowledging accuracy while minimizing impact. Yet those two words, partial quotation, would soon seal his fate. In exactly 43 seconds, Whitehouse would use that phrase to destroy him completely. The senator pressed on. "Regarding your so-called enemies list, you posted, 'The manhunt starts tomorrow,' and shared a video showing you using a chainsaw against your political opponents." The image of a potential FBI director promoting violent imagery stunned the chamber. Some senators visibly recoiled as reporters scrambled to record the revelation. Whitehouse held up printed screenshots to ensure the cameras caught every detail. "Is that you, Kash Patel?" Whitehouse asked. "Reposting that video? Right there at the top?" Patel hesitated. "Senator, I had nothing to do with creating that video," he said. Whitehouse cut in sharply. "That wasn't my question. Did you repost it?" Cornered, Patel had no choice but to admit, "That's me at the top." The admission detonated across social media. Chainsaw Patel began trending within minutes as Americans reacted to the disturbing image of a nominee for FBI director endorsing violent rhetoric. Whitehouse continued pressing. "You said FBI agents were responsible for the violence on January 6th, and I quote, beyond a reasonable doubt. Did you say that?" "That's completely incorrect, and I appreciate the opportunity to address that," Patel said, attempting to recover control. Whitehouse cut him off. "You'll have that opportunity in writing. For now, this is my time." Patel's dismissive reply, "Have at it," exposed a smug defiance that only deepened the sense of arrogance. Whitehouse delivered his next blow. "An Inspector General investigation found that statement false. You also said we should impeach judges who rule against Donald Trump. Judges you called, and I quote, political terrorists." The phrase political terrorists sent a visible ripple through the room. Even Republican senators shifted in their seats. The suggestion that federal judges were enemies of the state showed a contempt for the rule of law unworthy of any FBI nominee. Then came Whitehouse's most powerful evidence, the nuclear moment. "When this nominee tries to explain all this away," Whitehouse said, his tone measured and commanding, "remember this." He lifted a document. He testified under oath before a Colorado judge in a Trump-related case, and the judge found, and I quote, he was not a credible witness. His testimony was illogical and completely unsupported by evidence in the record. It was devastating. A federal judge had formally ruled Patel unreliable under oath, a fatal finding for anyone seeking to lead a law enforcement agency. "That's from a judge," Whitehouse emphasized, allowing the weight of those words to sink in. Exactly 43 seconds after Patel's partial quotation defense, Whitehouse delivered his final strike. "This is a dangerous time," he said. "I ask my colleagues whether these clear warnings, from Trump's own officials, from the record, and from Patel's own words, should be ignored. Just as the pardons for January 6th offenders were warnings, so are these. They must be heeded." The demolition was complete. Whitehouse had methodically dismantled Patel's credibility using evidence, testimony, and Patel's own statements. There's a vast difference between the polished image presented here today and the conduct this nominee has shown when left on his own, Whitehouse continued, his voice rising. "Character is revealed by action. And history shows that when security chiefs become tools of political power, the consequences are grave." He listed the warning signs. They are vengeful. They are grandiose. They are intemperate. They are partisan and blindly loyal. They are servile, unable to say no. Each word landed with precision, perfectly describing Patel's record. "The history of this nominee's conduct," Whitehouse concluded, "raises every one of those alarms." The final judgment, unfit and dangerous, hung unspoken in the air. The chamber fell silent. Patel sat motionless, his confidence gone. His legal team looked stunned, realizing they had just witnessed a career-ending moment. Within minutes, social media erupted. Patel destroyed, unfit and dangerous trended nationwide as viewers processed what they'd seen. Cable news broke into live coverage with urgent analysis. The fallout was immediate. Democrats shelved their questions. Whitehouse had already dismantled the nominee. Republican senators struggled to defend what was indefensible. Even conservative legal analysts began distancing themselves. By evening, betting markets had turned against Patel's confirmation. News anchors called it one of the most brutal Senate hearings in history. Even Fox News hesitated to defend him. But the consequences reached beyond one nominee. Whitehouse's performance exposed a deeper problem: the danger of appointing loyalists over professionals, and how such choices threaten democratic institutions. The hearing became a case study in how to confront authoritarian tendencies, not with drama or partisanship, but with facts, documentation, and moral clarity. Sometimes the strongest weapon in a democracy isn't rhetoric or spin. It's the truth, presented clearly and without fear. In those 43 seconds, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse proved that character defines leadership, conduct exposes truth, and democracy endures only when its defenders speak hard truths about those seeking power. The lesson was unmistakable. When authoritarians try to capture institutions, the only defense is the courage to call them what they are: unfit and dangerous.